Now, where do you think you're most likely to find a German cockroach in a residential like this one? Well, I'll tell you, research has shown that 9 out of 10 times, if there's a cockroach here, it's most likely going to be associated with the refrigerator. Let's take a look. I'll show you where they hang out. It's almost always back here, behind the refrigerator. Now I'm going to unplug this refrigerator, but I caution you, anything you unplug, as you already know, must be plugged back in before you leave. Now, where do cockroaches live back here? Well, I'll tell you, there's a million cracks and crevices back here. All this cabinetry where it bolts on the wall, in the cabinetry itself, down here behind the cabinetry, and down along the baseboard on both sides. And that's just the structure. Now we have the refrigerator itself. This molding around refrigerators is very often loose, and the back panel of a lot of refrigerators is made of cardboard. Cardboard's form of paper. We know how German cockroaches love that. But down here at the bottom, this is where the real critical area is. It's warm. There's usually moisture there from condensate. It's the perfect place for roaches. Up in here, there's insulation. Behind insulation, we have a great German cockroach harborage. So, Avert dry flowable cockroach bait is perfect for this environment. Where we're going to treat cracks and crevices up in the cabinetry, behind the cabinetry, all of these locales, down around the baseboards down here, anywhere where the baseboard is pulling away. Don't forget to treat the top of the baseboard and the bottom where it seals against the floor if there's a crack there. Also behind these lower cabinets. Now, make certain that these cabinets have a back on them. Some cabinets don't. And if you put your Avert back in there, what you're going to do is have a potential for contamination of the utensils there. So don't treat these cracks without first examining the inside of the cabinet and making certain that there's a back to that cabinet. On the refrigerator, anywhere there are cracks and crevices around the framework, and particularly down here. Make certain to get it around the insulation. And be careful for air movement. Some of these refrigerators have a compressor that blows air out when it cycles on. And you don't want to put your Avert dry flowable cockroach bait in an area where that air compressor can blow some of that bait out into this area back here. So that's it for the refrigerator. Remember, don't overlook it. It's a key location for German cockroaches, actually in any kitchen, but particularly apartment kitchens. We'll plug our refrigerator back in and push it back against the wall. Some refrigerators can't be pulled out from the wall, and when they can't, you're just going to have to do the best you can. Actually, where it forms a crack back here, this is a place that you can carefully apply Avert dry flowable cockroach bait. Now, there's one other key area in the kitchen I want to show you. Let's look at it. Another area you never want to overlook in a residential kitchen is the sink area. You know why. Moisture, darkness, food, everything a German cockroach needs. And probably the most key area is under the sink. If I were going to raise cockroaches, this is where I'd do it. Everything they need can be found under here. And very often, it's very cluttered, even though this one isn't. And in some cases, people keep their garbage can under here. So roaches have all of that food in that garbage can to feed on. Now, what areas do you look for under here, and where do you need to pay attention? Well, the most common areas are up here, up in the cabinetry, up in the corners, any of the cracks and crevices that are formed up there. Also around the edges on the bottom. And don't forget the plumbing escutcheons or the pipe collars along the back wall. These, if you can pull them away, there's usually an access to the void in there. And that's an area we want to use our Avert dry flowable cockroach bait, back in that hole. Any other cracks and crevices in the framework. And don't forget the baseboard up around the sink itself. Usually the baseboards will often pull away from the wall, and there'll be a crack there, and it's a great place for German cockroaches. The smaller the cracks, the more likely they're to have nymphs in them, so don't leave those unattended either. Now, one area that's often overlooked is the void at the bottom of the cabinet. Now, there are two ways to access this void. One is through a hole or a natural opening in this top, or via the kick plate. Now, sometimes the kick plate here along the bottom does not go all the way up, and you can actually feel a space there that you can use to inject your dry flowable cockroach bait into. Now, if you use the extension that I've showed you previously, it's not too hard to get in there. But sometimes that's too awkward. So what we do is we drill a small hole at the top, just offset a little bit, right through that piece of lumber. And then you take and place the injection tip in the hole and puff Avert dry cockroach bait into that void. That's all there is to it. Now remember, use your good practices with your Avert dry flowable. Try when you can to keep it in a horizontal position. If you have to angle it, that's okay, but be careful when angling down. You don't want to get too much of the product out. The use of the crack and crevice extension will help control that flow. Now that's about it for the kitchen. Let's go look at the bathroom. Here in the bathroom, it's not all that different from the kitchen. I was just treating behind one of the escutcheons or pipe collars where the plumbing goes through the wall under this bathroom sink cabinet. You know, those voids behind plumbing are very important to treat, particularly in apartments, because someone else may live on the other side of the wall. This plumbing may back up to somebody else's plumbing. And research has shown that cockroaches move between apartments using those plumbing lines and those void spaces that separate the apartments. And since those are voids, a dry flowable, like Avert dry flowable cockroach bait is a perfect material to use in there. Also, there are the traditional cracks and crevices where the cabinets meet the wall. It can be treated. Anywhere where this splash plate adheres to the wall, if there are cracks and crevices. Switch plates also. Again, you may have to remove those to get access to the area behind them. Mirrors in bathrooms, particularly where they sit on the splash boards. If there's no caulking there, young German cockroaches can get in there very easily. You never want to forget that. Other locations to look at are around the toilet, particularly along the base where it adheres to the floor. If there's no caulk there, you may get cockroaches living under there, particularly small nymphs. So this is a great place to treat. This one is caulked very well. The baseboard behind the toilet, because there's also always a plumbing line back here. And you want to make darn sure that that plumbing line gets treated behind that pipe collar. One puff into that void and you've treated it for a long time. Remember, Avert dry flowable cockroach bait lasts a long time. You'll get up to a year residual activity from that material. Now around bathtubs, particularly down here along the bottom, if you've got molding down there, you can treat under that molding very well with Avert dry flowable. Now if you want to treat back up in here or up along the top, particularly areas that get wet and stay wet, I recommend you may want to consider using Avert gel cockroach bait. The gels are not as affected as adversely as the dry flowable formulation might be. So this would be an area where a different formulation of Avert would be ideal.
For more information, visit epestsupply.com.